Possessions don't always look like this. One of the most common ones is narcissism. Narcissists are souls like you and I who are depolarized and got taken over by negative entities. Let me explain. Narcissists are created in a household where their needs are neglected by their caregivers, who they depended on for survival. When this happened, the child subconsciously feels because nobody cares about their needs, they must survive by detaching themselves from people and only concerning themselves with their own interests. This puts them out of balance and into the extreme of the masculine energy, neglecting their feminine energy, which is the connection to the collective, empathy, their emotions, their internal world, their spirit, etc. They end up centering themselves and depending solely on their external world and masculine energy. This builds an unhealthy self-concept that impedes real self-love, which is what allows connection to their soul. Their version of self-love is to put themselves above everybody else to meet their needs for survival. But this is really because subconsciously they don't believe they are worthy of love or their needs being met. This puts them subconsciously in the vibration of shame, the lowest vibration. And anybody in a low vibration is susceptible to entities coming to latch off of that vibration, who feed off of it and further throw the person into a deeper narcissistic delusion. These entities cannot be cleansed away. Low vibrations are what feeds them, so the only way to get rid of them is to work on the shame wound. But this requires huge awareness and willpower, which most narcissists we know are not really willing to admit they need help. But what are your thoughts on narcissists?
I have to say, some narcissists become narcissists because they are spoiled and very privileged. They start expecting things to come easy for them and don't understand the differences and the relationships people have with each other and with energy and boundaries. And they feel like something is being stolen from them when you expect something normal from them. And they don't develop or mature emotionally. And maybe they also have emotional and existential issues and they are kinda aware of those things, but no one seems to be able to guide them. I don't know what happens with them exactly specifically. Then I will talk for my own case. I'm not sure if masculine and feminine is appropriate. The way she described them as feminine relating to the collective, because the narcissist often relates to the collective. For example, the being status conscious and wanting high performance for it, and also to feel valued through your high performance and providing for others by neglecting yourself. And what I mean by that is also, if your needs are neglected, you have to learn to provide for yourself, and also other people shame you when you're already sick because you're being neglected. Which means you have to overperform and shut off your emotions and emotional needs. Even shutting off your emotions and making your body language, words and intentions, everything to be intentional, calculated and precise and for a reason and purpose. That is in a way rigid masculine energy, and Carl Jung mentioned the archetype of the dancing woman as a what can make you not bored, because you're bored when you're not creative or something, right? And a lot of things about women are associated with shame. For example, aesthetics in the male world. If someone has good aesthetics, they can be shamed for being gay unless they have something to back them up, like physical force or authority or something more like that. So you shut off your emotional processing, which makes your body sick. You shut off your expressions, genuine expressions, because you have to wear a mask and you have to appear a certain way. Because also, if you show vulnerability, not only do your caregivers attend to that properly perhaps, but also your peers and friends, and they can think that you are way too much for no reason, and don't try to think twice or look twice, or maybe don't even care, even if it's obvious. Being betrayed by others and repressing emotions and not being able to express yourself can all build up resentment, aggression, and distrust, but also pain. And one way to deal with pain is to move the energy from your body to somewhere else, but also again to have your needs met, which you can demand or ask for, or express, and you can get humiliated for it, which happens many times. And even if it's not completely intentional, you're surrounded by people, children or growing up, or even adults who do not know that kind of trauma and who do not care about it and who do not care to attend it. So you can get aggressive with them and they don't even know why. So what I would say about narcissists not recognizing that they need help, I mean, I'm kinda self-diagnosed and I somewhat undid or figured out some things about the narcissism. Because I would watch videos like this and see myself and even feel personally attacked and offended. And I didn't like being seen or defined that way as well. Because what happens is people also often tell you how you should feel, but they don't see you first, but they also don't see the extent of the situation and how it works and what should make sense and what work would it take. It's like they just want you to get fixed because they said something, which isn't how this works. Most people have not been through that kind of thing in the first place to know. I'm not saying there are, of course, empaths who can understand this and imagine and guide you even if they haven't experienced it themselves. But a lot of people we have the ego of that. Of course, the narcissist can disagree anyway, even if the other person is right. But sometimes I would disagree with people because it doesn't make sense to me in the moment, and I will need time to think and rethink it again and again. And people don't even want to allow you to have that introspection. As soon as you disagree with them, they can start blaming you. So they have the ego of wanting to help with trauma and such bad experiences, but they don't actually want to stick around with the process. Which a baby like cries and you can yell at them. I'm not saying I do, but of course it's kind of expected for someone who has been emotionally neglected and struggles with all of that. And if you don't understand what you're even saying, you can also say offensive and invalidating and wrong and abusive things even if you don't mean to. So it's not fair to ask for someone to be vulnerable with you if you don't know the extent of that. So I kind of say that not to discourage anyone from trying to help, but I feel like the solution to the problems can be sometimes very obvious, but people literally do not want to put in the effort, it seems, to get there. And I think there is a danger in growing old as taking things and lessons and adaptations that you've learned for granted, and you forget how you got there. So now that you act, isn't this obvious? Like, to a person who's kinda emotionally a child, you don't guide them from one place to another. You just kinda say something that they cannot relate to or understand and expect them to go there. And the things that you have learned or that you believe or think that you have learned may not even be applicable or correct anyway. and they may not be reconciled with that kind of trauma. There are things that only a person who doesn't have to struggle with that thing, or who hasn't gone through that thing, that has to consider other things to make it work. So about self-love, you've done bad things up until this point, right? And if you know your shadow, you may even know that some of those things could have led someone to that, and you have to consciously and intentionally think about, that's my own reasoning, the bad things that you could do and that you know that you're capable of, and stop them from happening in the future, in the present. You make yourself the kind of person who wouldn't do these things before you've been in a situation where they could have happened, right? And if most people do not do that and are not even aware of that, and if they haven't been through that trauma and they haven't acted on those dark impulses, and they don't know how to teach you to control them, then what do they know about teaching you self-love? They don't know themselves. And the hypocritical thing is, even if you do a bad thing, even if it's not that fatal, you can get shamed and ostracized, cancelled. Your life can be ruined for things that you didn't even do anyway. And people can do that collectively, and they often do it collectively in masses. People get manipulated. So how is someone supposed to feel like they are worthy of self-love by people who tell them these things, who do these things? This goes back to the beginning. She said that a child detaches from other people to learn survival. I did care for other people, and I did try to, although even if it was kind of detached in some ways, maybe. And I don't know if it was always detached. Of course, you kind of mediate that border, right? You don't just believe someone is so good and you can always trust them, or you just believe that they are only an object and only use them for your survival and pleasure. There are people who have darker unconscious things that they don't understand, and I cannot feel safe around them if they don't even want to talk about it. Most people don't even want to talk about these things or recognize them anyway in themselves. So how am I supposed to feel safe regarding survival when people cannot even tell me the truth, when you cannot even have a genuine interaction or conversations with others about deep things? As soon as someone says something remotely deep, they would meme it and be like, I'm 14 and I'm deep. Like they learn to joke, and that's what some narcissists do as well, and act like now they can just joke about anything and this solves all and any existential issues. There is maybe a fundamental issue. I don't want to invoke any evil energies, or to open people to them, but there is those fears that people generally have. Maybe that is all vibrational, that we are flawed human beings and our mistakes can lead not only to our own death but to each other's deaths eventually, and we have to be thoughtful, responsible, empathetic, and mature, and spiritual, and all of that, and capable, and learn, and try, and fight. Most narcissists aren't even willing to admit they need help. Okay, but there is a chance that, I mean, I became physically ill because of depressed emotional energy as well, and can't properly function. And you can counteract that by being violent. For example, because I took it on myself, but I can understand wanting to take it on other people. I don't recommend it. I don't even recommend taking it on yourself. I think you should figure some way out of this. But that's what I have to deal with. And if you admit that you need help, you kinda break your momentum and your shield, right? Depending on the narcissist and how they feel on their own issues and whatever, right? And people can try to help you and fail because they're incompetent and betray you anyway. Or pretend that they're helping you and not actually do it properly anyway. But there was also the fear that if someone tries to help and you open up to them and they end up hurting you even in your mind go in the wrong direction and feel as if they hurt you even if they didn't, or if your world view is incorrect or the way you think and is distorted, and because of that you perceive them as hurting you, doing something wrong to you when they didn't really, and you lash out and you hurt them, then you can feel shame about that, and you can feel regret, and you can feel like you don't deserve love because you did it, and you did it to the person who tried to help you. And if you think or feel or have experienced that people who try to help you are rare, and you hurt the one who tried to help you, well, why would you subject someone to that again or admit that you need help if you expect something like that to happen?